Heal everybody up as much as possible. There we go. Nice. Not like orange berries are super useful at this point in the game. Now that I've healed up my Pokemon a bit, let's go to the other thing that I mentioned earlier with the UN, the feminist wing of the UN, talking about gender critical feminists, or TERFs in common parlance, as an example of an anti-trans hate group, which is awesome. Shoutouts to Erin Reed, Erin in the morning. Very cool. Friend of the stream. She doesn't know who I am, but I know who she is, and she's pretty cool. UN Women calls gender criticals an extremist anti-rights movement. In a shot at gender critical activists, the UN Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women announced that trans rights are not opposed to women's rights for Pride Month. Pretty unambiguous, but also uncontroversial statements, as is characteristic of the UN, I think. It's a decent length, but I'll read through it. In an announcement for Pride Month, UN Women announced that anti-rights movements are on the rise across the world with respect to queer people. The organization highlighted steps being taken in several countries to target transgender people, women, and queer people with overtly discriminatory policies and restrictions. UN Women also explicitly called out several movements as, quote, anti-rights, including the gender critical movement, which frames women's rights as being in opposition to transgender people. This is a it seems like sometimes it seems like, or has seemed like to me, that this strategy is like weirdly prevalent lately, but this isn't the first time that such a strategy has been used. In fact, there were shades of this during the 1960s and 70s with the gay rights movement or whatever, and of course the a lot of the opposition as well to civil rights for racial minorities was framed in the light of defending women from, you know, savage black guys or some shit like that. It's not a one-to-one, but oftentimes the perceived defenselessness of women will be invoked to justify the oppression of another group or discrimination against another group that the narrative holds will be a threat to our defenseless population of women. Which, of course, women aren't defenseless. They are proportionally more exploited and more vulnerable relative to men in a patriarchal system and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean they're defenseless or politically without agency or relevance, right? In a way, the sort of the framing of the gender critical narrative sort of presumes it presumes the subservience of women, which is not very feminist of them, I must say. Being the world's most hyper-feminist myself. God damn it, Brelu. Alright, get out of here. Medicine. You didn't know that. I should have just had this guy out the whole time. God damn. Yeah, okay. That wasn't too bad. Moving on here. On June 11th, UN Women took to social media to sound the alarm on the surge of anti-queer movements. Nice. Yay. Let's see what... Wait. What do I get for this? Some money and rare candies. Okay, cool. Alright. Yes. Okay, sound the alarm on the surge of the anti-queer movements, which have been fueled by a 50% funding increase over the past decade. That's a lot. That is really a lot. Ooh. Big boy trainer or heals? Just got healed. I don't know what I go for here. Gloomy? Dark type. Chilly, that's ice type. I have a dark type, I don't have ice types. Maybe I'll go for this one. No, you know what? Just send it. Absolutely send it. All right. The UN's Arm for Global Women's Issues highlighted how these anti-rights movements are gaining traction worldwide, notably those trying to pit trans rights against women's rights. Yeah, because like Aaron said, like the UN Women's Group said, these these like these two subsets of human rights are not in opposition to each other. In fact, they are, if anything, complementary. If you guys know anything about intersectionality, there are some basic principles of political analysis that hold that, like, a victory for any minority group is a victory for all minority groups. So a victory for women is also a victory for trans people. A victory for trans people is a victory for women, and things like that. It's gets more complicated, but the fundamental part of it is just that this is not a zero-sum game of who gets rights and who doesn't. Women having rights doesn't mean trans people can't have rights. Trans people having rights doesn't mean cis women can't have rights. That's not how this works. You know, in fact, the feminist movement, the women's rights movement, and the trans rights movement are very, very deeply intertwined, because obviously transgender people, you have the breakdown of men and women, both of whom experience a patriarchal system in various differing but still mostly negative ways. So the sort of minority of trans people and the political minority that is women have these shared interests in getting their own human rights issues addressed. And in fact, to divide those movements would weaken both of them rather than strengthen them, because it would deny them another access of coalition building. A lot of times, broad coalitions are built along multiple different groups of interests that share some common goals, if that makes sense. You know, like a lot of feminist movements have had representations in unions over the years. A lot of unions have had sort of a feminist bend to them. And things like that. There's a lot of different ways that intersectionality exists. But, you know, that's what's what on that front. These moonstones, I don't think I need those. But I'm less likely to use any of these other things. I should have sold these. You know what? I'll toss these X accuracies to pick up these moonstones, because even if I don't need them, I could sell them. In fact, I will do the same thing with these X. Do I have any like X defense or something? X attack, guard special. I have dire hit. Yeah, sure, fuck it. Get dire hit out of there. Give me these lax incenses. I can sell them at the next rest stop. And that'll be good. Limited bag space is a son of a bitch in this game. Let's keep going. Yeah, okay, here we go. This quote backs up what I was saying. Some try to frame the human rights of transgender people as being at odds with women's rights, for instance, asserting that trans women pose a threat to the rights, spaces, and safety of cisgender women. That plays into what I was saying earlier about a lot of the gender-critical framing being very anti-feminist by sort of posing women as these helpless flowers that need be protected from, I don't know, degenerate threats of like trans people. I don't know how that exactly works. But yeah. The announcement stated as such. However, such assertions have no factual basis. Transgender people are often the most at risk in such spaces, and hate-fueled rhetoric from these movements can increase that risk. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I could have said it any better if I tried to say it. Alright, where's that X attack, X special attack? Yeah, get these out of here. Let's find somebody else. Acrobatics. Okay. Alright. Yes. Earthquake. Oh, that's so good. Get rid of Drill One for that. Shell Smash. No, I don't want Shell Smash. I'm running a defensive build for this. Earthquake? Hell yeah. Energy Ball? Sure, fuck it. Beats Pin Missile. Yay! I have a Swampert now. Actually, really good Pokemon. Okay. Perhaps most impactful, though, returning to this article, is the full report released alongside the announcement. In the report, UN Women explicitly calls out the, quote, gender-critical movement, which has infamous adherents such as J.K. Rowling, as being an extremist anti-rights movement similar to men's rights activism in rhetoric. Yeah, it's somebody mentioned, and it's kind of crazy that this is the case based on the fact that, like, I grew up reading the Harry Potter books. Nobody knows J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter anymore. Nobody cares. She's gonna be remembered for the dumb TERF shit more than Harry Potter. She will be remembered more for her Holocaust denial than for writing children's books. Which is a fitting end, because it cost her $0 to not say any of that. You know, she could have just shut up, and she would have been beloved for centuries for creating, like, cultural icons of children's literature. But no, she decided to make her insecurities everybody else's problem. So that's what's what. Anyways, there is a long tradition in which anti-rights movements frame equality for women. This is pulled from the UN Women page. Equality for women and queer people as a threat to so-called traditional family values. Movements encompassing anti-gender, gender-critical, and men's rights have taken this to new extremes, tapping into wider fears about the future of society and accusing feminist and queer movements of threatening civilization itself. Really tapping into the far right with that one. You know, usually the far right is the one that, like, blows up every social issue into a world-ending or civilization-ending thing. Especially when it's something as innocuous and, like, niche as, I don't know, trans women posting pictures of themselves wearing catgirl ears and outfits and stuff. Like, okay, cool. Like, no, I saw a cute trans girl. The West has fallen. Billions must die. Send them to the death camps. Or some shit like that. Like, they truly have no idea how insane they sound, and it actually makes it 100 times funnier. Anti-rights movements is continuing from the quote from the UN Women's page. Anti-rights movements have pushed for overtly discriminatory policies and restrictions on essential services, and even for the criminalization of people based on their actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. This is essentially the, like, well, I mean, this is just the manifestation of that reactionism that's inherent to movements like this. That's the only common thread to all this. You'll notice a lot of so-called radical feminists who are like the gender-critical types, you will see them very frequently in the far-right coalitions. You will never see them in a left-wing coalition, because they're not actually a constituent part of the left. They're not a constituent part of the movements that are interested in advancing the rights of politically disadvantaged groups. What they are part of is effectively a psyop, an attempt to co-opt the rhetoric and aesthetic of that movement, of a social justice movement, to, like, Uno reverse card that oppression back just into the place where it already was being directed, you know? It's essentially, you know how a scarecrow in a field of crops is meant to be a sloppy facsimile of the human form. In the same kind of way, the gender critical movement is a very weak and sloppy facsimile of the form of a feminist movement, because it's not actually a feminist movement. It's just a straw man of like, I don't know. It's a straw man of quite a few things, but it's like there's no substance to it, apart from, like, bad stuff. You know, imagine that the scarecrow in this instance is, like, rotting and infested with maggots or something. I don't know. That's I guess what I'm getting at. either way, I think the main point just being it's a sloppy imitation, and it really hasn't. It's not really fooling anybody anymore. They've long since consolidated. You know, the Noswell vortex, as it were, has closed a little bit. They've dropped the mask. Currently, the gender critical movement is most active in the United Kingdom, which, yeah, considering J.K. Rowling is like the central figurehead of that movement. Ah, Arbok. Do I have Ekans already? Here, let me check the Pokedex to find out, and then I will catch or not catch. I don't. Okay, so I'll catch. Do I have any poison types? No. I don't think I want them. No. Recently, conservative women and equalities minister, wow, woke conservatism. Just kidding. Kemi Badenoch. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not gonna even try. Revealed that members of the movement were put in key health positions to produce the CAS review, a report that resulted in broad-scale attacks on transgender youth and their medical care in the country. Yeah, if you guys remember, the CAS report is basically just a meticulously assembled piece of medical hackery. You know, there's it takes all of the available. Well, it takes a lot of, not all of, there's so much of it. It takes a lot of the available literature on youth transition, you know, youth gender transition, and medicine procedures to that effect, and the sort of identifiable patterns, you know, best practices and stuff like that. And effectively, it dismisses out of hand every study which does not conclude anything that could be kind of adjacent to saying, don't let kids transition, right? Which is a majority of those studies would advocate, like, yeah, look, this stuff needs to be available for kids because the consequences of not making them available if kids should need them are disastrous for those kids. But there are a few studies that are like a little bit more cautious, or say like we need more information on this. Further studies always good, and so they exclude, in that review, they exclude all the studies that say anything to the degree of like, well, they exclude most of the studies that have anything directly transpositive to say, and then they take the remaining studies and well, you know, just from that say, yeah, and this is why we should ban transitioning for kids, or something like that. It's incredibly sloppy and does not hold up to even the lightest academic scrutiny. Which, I mean, that's getting into the esoteric bit of it, but like, you know, the far right, not known for the you know, the scientific rigor or anything. You know, the best shit that they have is evopsych and scientific racism, which evolutionary psychology is basically just the sexism version of that, like scientific sexism. I get rid of this one soda pop. I'll do that. It might come back to bite me in a way I can't fully foresee right now, but fuck it, just send it. Yeah, here we go. CAS review, a report that resulted in broad-scale attacks on transgender youth and their medical care in the country. Similarly, the UK is currently grappling with attempts to promote conversion therapy of transgender youth, ban trans people from bathrooms that align with their gender identity, and exclude trans women from women's hospital wards. Yeah, all of this is so fucking dumb. Somebody, in fact, my dad, when we were talking about this, pointed out to me something that is actually an incredible point recently. You know, specifically on the topic of, like, bathrooms. What the fuck do people think is going on in the bathroom? You know, it's and this was in the context of like, oh, putting cameras in the women's bathroom or whatever. Some like guy was caught perving on women in the bathroom or something like that. It's like, hey, I'm gonna put a camera in here. Like, what do people think happens in the bathroom? People go to the bathroom. Like, you generally don't I don't know. Like, that's pretty routine, right? In fact, I think, you know, doing anything that would attract so much visibility is probably the last thing on trans people's minds, given the precarious position that they're in relative to policymaking. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. If this is how, like, a government's willing to act when they haven't done jack shit wrong, imagine if like, one trans individual, in parentheses, one, is it like does something minorly weird or creepy in a bathroom, and then they all point the finger and say, this is why we need to kill every single trans person, or some shit like that. It would be insane. In the US, Republican candidates and legislators have latched onto similar language, passing, quote, women's bills of rights that contain literal regarding women's rights, but instead target transgender women's access to bathrooms and seek to end legal recognition of transgender people altogether. Notably, these legislators and organizations that push the bills often oppose many other women's rights issues, such as reproductive health care access, abortion rights, and generous paid family leave. Yeah. That's a little bit of what I was talking about. That's the aesthetic of feminism, the aesthetic of being a champion of the poor, defenseless women, while still being in a conservative position where you want to subjugate them to the state or the pater familias or whatever, like the fucking patriarchy or whatever, right? Like, none of this is an actual concern for women. It's just weaponizing that aesthetic of seeming compassion or something like that. I'm not gonna have Togetic on the team, I think. Item. Lonely Mints. Rio, don't care that much. Ninjask, don't care that much. Please stop. Oh my god. Nah, I'm loading state. Fucking, you can't do the shit where you're like, haha, you don't get to run from the wild battle. Fuck you, I'll run away if I fucking want to. Okay. The move to declare gender criticals as an anti-rights movement is a notable one. In recent years, the UN Special Rapporteur, there you go, on violence against women has supported gender-critical issues and has been praised by supporters of the movement for doing so. Well, that ain't good. Notable actions taken by this person, Reem Al-Salem, include opposing Biden's Title IX policies for transgender youth in the U.S. and the World Health Organization's support for self-determined gender identity. God damn. In these policies, Al-Salem explicitly frames women's rights and the safety of women's spaces as being in competition with transgender inclusion. Guys, I've already mentioned that's not how this works. If you frame it as a competition between two minority groups for civil rights, then the underlying position there is that neither of those groups should have rights, because by pitting them against each other like that, you are sabotaging the strength of both of those movements at the same time. Now, to unify them, that would be truly in favor of their rights as minority groups. Salem has also historically shared content from far-right anti-queer organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom International, which has promoted anti-queer policies globally. Not super surprising. The UN has an important role to play in the coming years to combat international disinformation regarding queer people, especially transgender individuals. Excuse me. I bit my tongue a little bit there. SPLC-designated hate organizations such as the Society for Evidence in Gender Medicine and GenSpect have gained power and operate in multiple countries to oppose transgender rights. Victories obtained in one country are then used as justification to get other countries to follow suit. In the US, they are likewise used in court fights and legislative hearings over transgender rights. Yeah, so basically these political groups try to obtain a wedge wherever possible. They get one, they like in a courtroom, they could go forum shopping, or they try to get one constituency where there's like a judge insane enough, or a legislator, like a politician insane enough to be like, yes, actually, I do hate all trans people, and I think cat boys and cat girls are cringe, especially when they wear the trans flag and should all go to hell. And they write that into a law or something. And then these organizations, these extremist groups, use that as a veil of legitimacy, saying, hey, look, these people in positions of power, these legislators, sometimes even people who are nominally experts in the field of medicine, like Dr. Cass, who has since walked back everything in the Cass report, and they say, look, this agrees with us. You should do this too. Such is the case with countries like the Netherlands and Sweden, I believe, have also adopted similar restrictions on the rights of trans people based on previous restrictions that other governments have instituted, not from a preponderance of existing medical research on the subject. In fact, it actively contravenes that, but rather from political pressure from certain interest groups that have a lot of fucking money. Remember that uptick in funding that Aaron Reed mentioned earlier. That's part of the reason that anti-trans hate groups are on such a fucking blaze right now. Great. Let's go. No, I'm dumb. I thought it was the heal center coming up, but instead it's this thing. Oh, I could have gotten more money if I just went the other way. Ah, damn it. All right, whatever. Yeah, how do I end this segment? Trans rights. That seems good. UN said trans rights too. That's pretty based. Love that. It's always nice to see something like that happen. And gender critical's fucking molding because they thought of a dick one time or something. I don't know. A lot of them just fucking hate men and anything perceived to be man-like, and they like associate trans women with that. Because really, a lot of the times when trans people catch the ire of the far right, it's mostly trans women catching shots and stuff. Oh shit. Ha! Got him. Yeah, no, I don't think there is really a better way for me to end that than by saying, based UN Women's Org says, trans rights and also fuck gender criticals. Fuck them TERFs. Get them out of here. You guys suck. Here to me cut the segment. That's the one segment I'm gonna make out of this.